Spider-Man Far From Home is Marvel Studios' 23rd film in their Marvel Cinematic Universe, and sees the Wallcrawler head abroad to deal with a series of elemental villains with the help of multiversal hero Mysterio. Picking up not long after Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home deals with a world post-Bruce Banner snapping everyone who was snapped by Thanos in Infinity War back into existence, and Tony Stark's sacrifice. A sacrifice that has taken its toll on young Peter Parker, who, while still continuing to be Spider-Man and helping where he can with fundraisers and dealing with criminals, is racked with PTSD from seeing another of his father figures die. With school starting back up, Peter decides to take advantage of the school trip to Europe and not worry about being Spider-Man for the time being. Instead, just looking to be a normal kid and hoping to continue building a relationship with Michelle. Nothing of course goes to plan, as some of that Parker luck comes into play as Nick Fury and Maria Hill recruit him to help deal with a group of elemental beings who have been terrorizing the world, apparently brought through a rip in the multiversal wall when the snap happened. They aren't the only thing that came through, as a hero named Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, also came through and has been battling the elementals with Fury and Hill in hopes that they don't destroy Peter's world like they did his. Peter has to try and have fun on his Europe trip, woo Michelle, and save the day with Mysterio. Mysterio might not be all he says he is. So almost all of the main cast from Spider-Man Homecoming, save for Michael Keating and Laura Harrier, have returned for the sequel, with new cast members obviously being Jake Gyllenhaal's Quentin Beck, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, Kobe Smulders' Maria Hill, and Remy He as Brad, a romantic rival to Peter, just to name a few. All fit into the cast pretty damn well, and I really love seeing most of these characters interact with one another, especially Peter and Fury. It's kind of got that early sort of Tony Stark in Iron Man 2 relationship with him going, but Fury knows he can kind of steamroll Peter a little bit more because he's just a kid. Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is also lots of fun. It's a version of the character I think some vocal people might not like, but I absolutely loved him. I thought it was perfect, and he's having so much fun with the character and in the film, and it shows in his performance, especially near the end of the film. Jon Favreau returns as Happy Hogan, and I'm always glad to see him. You know, he's the one who kind of started the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so for him to have a role in these films as a supporting character is great, and it's even better here because obviously with Tony now dead, he sees Peter as like a younger Tony, and because of that he gets this kind of fatherly relationship with him, almost literally, as well as he's seemingly implied and seen dating Aunt May, which I think is pretty cool. Peter and Michelle's relationship, which is a big main point of this movie, is done really well as well and kind of feels quite real, again borrowing all those points that made Homecoming's school scenes really great. John Watts has a real knack for doing this kind of, I guess, teen romance and drama in a great way, where it doesn't feel like one of those CW shows where it just feels like made up and everything. There's like an awkwardness to it, and it helps it feel real, and it totally did. Peter's lessons about becoming not the next Iron Man, but the next or new Spider-Man is done really well. His relationship with Tony is a big crux of this movie, and how his death kind of shattered him is done really well, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Peter after this film, like what his lessons that he learned in this film about becoming his own person and not having to worry about that Stark legacy is done for him, especially with what happens at the after credits, which I'll get to later on. Compared to Homecoming, everything is kind of taken up by about 3 notches, including the action. The action in this movie was lots of fun, it was creative, much like the first one, really dynamic, lots of use of Spider-Man costume, lots more swinging as well in this one, since he's obviously in places that have higher buildings and allow for more swinging and even gliding near the end of the film, which is really cool. Mysterio's powers are perfectly translated to film as well. There was a minute there, especially with his costume, that I was kind of worried like, oh, that's not going to translate well, especially with the big fishbowl, but the fishbowl looks fantastic, and its powers, how they're like shown and everything, are really cool. The elementals were actually really cool as well, and I was kind of worried they would just be kind of like faceless goons, and in a way they are, and I'll get more about that in my spoiler part of the review, but they were just really fun and really creative with like lava and fire, and the one I really liked was the one at the London Bridge, which I believe was the air elemental. It was really great with all the storms and electrical discharge. We've seen it in the trailer. It was great seeing Peter swing through it all and all that. So let's get to spoilers. So beyond this point will be all spoilers. You can skip to the end if you want to hear my score and final closing comments. So while Sony usually have a tendency see they did it a lot with the first Homecoming, which is kind of spoil lots of the big points. They surprisingly left out the real big plot points in this movie, which I was absolutely shocked at. One of the big plot points, which is actually kind of glimpsed in the trailer, is a pair of glasses Peter gets given, and these are Tony's glasses that we see in Avengers Infinity War that he wore when fighting Ebony Maw and all that. So these glasses have an AI in it called Edith, and Edith does stand for something, I just can't remember what it was, something about death and heroes or something. So this is given to Peter by Fury, and these contain all of Tony's files, designs, everything, basically giving Peter the keys to the kingdom more or less to do what he needs to do with them and make special gadgets and all that sort of stuff. And we learn that this is actually tied into a bigger plot point, which is that Quentin Beck is a fraud, basically. He's not from another Earth, he's from Peter's 616 universe, and he's actually a disgruntled Stark employee who was fired, and he's actually the man who developed the technology behind BARF, the binary augmented retro framing that was debuted in Civil War. And there's actually a great scene where they kind of cut back to that Civil War scene, and you see behind the scenes of the stage there's Quentin Beck there, and he's become unstable because Tony basically took his designs for himself and made a therapy session out of it and sort of spat in his face, really. So him, along with a bunch of other disgruntled employees, including, and I really like this pool as well, including the man who Obadiah Stane yells at that couldn't fit a small arc reactor into a small Iron Man suit in the first Iron Man, the one he says Tony Stark built that in the cave with a box of scraps. That guy is in this film and actually kind of an integral part of Quentin's plan, which I thought was really great. So along with these characters, Quentin has kind of came up with a story of Mysterio coming from another Earth and all that sort of stuff, as well as the elementals, which are all sort of projections and holograms and everything, and he wants to kind of take over Iron Man's legacy as the world's greatest hero and make his illusions a bit more dangerous, which is why he needs Edith, since Edith is in control of a drone system, which you get introduced to in a really funny way in the movie, where Peter wants a photo deleted and the app on the glasses think he wants this guy killed, he wants Brad killed, and he has to try and stop the drones from killing him and everything. It's quite funny. So Mysterio's illusions are really fucking awesome throughout the film. They're a pretty big highlight of the film. There's so many good ones. My favorite probably being the one where Beck traps Peter in it and makes him see like dead Iron Man and all that sort of stuff, kind of triggering his PTSD, and he has to use his spider sense to get out of it. And spider sense as well throughout this film is jokingly called the Peter Tingle. May and Ned all call it that. Well, Peter doesn't actually like that and doesn't particularly come up with a name for it. So while the end of the movie posits that Mysterio is killed by one of these drones, I mean, it's Mysterio, he's probably not dead. He's a master illusionist, and you know, how many times did that happen in the comics where you think he's dead, then he comes back in a few issues or something. So I'm really glad that we might even get to see Jake Gyllenhaal in the Mysterio costume again at some point. The great thing is as well, it's Mysterio, so you can kind of cast anyone as him. You can just make it, oh, it's an illusion, he's pretending to be this other actor or something. There's lots of really cool stuff you can do with him in future films, and send him into other characters' movies. Those aren't the only big plot twists this movie has to offer, as it leaves the two credit scenes, and there are two, to do the probably biggest ones. And this is what really surprised me, that these were like kind of left as credit scenes, which really surprised me. These are probably the biggest since that first Iron Man one. So the first one was that Nick Fury and Maria Hill aren't the real Nick Fury and Maria Hill. They are Skrulls. I know this unfortunately isn't a setup to Secret Invasion like I initially thought it was when the scene was unfolding, but it's actually pretty cool, since we learned that they are being filled in by Talos and I believe his wife, who people will remember from Captain Marvel. And I was so happy seeing this because it means Talos is still around, which means Ben Mendelsohn is still around, and I really enjoyed his character in that film, so I'm glad to see he's still around. We learned that Fury is kind of on vacation in space in the Skrull ship, so I guess he went to space with Captain Marvel at some point, which is pretty cool. Probably the biggest twist, however, comes from the after credit scene, like right at the end, which we see Peter and MJ swinging through New York, all that sort of stuff, and then Peter leaves Mary Jane and hops up on top of a lamp or a light post or something, and he sees a newscast playing, and it's apparently a video that Quentin Beck, before his death apparently, sent to the Daily Bugle, and it shows Spider-Man is a heavily edited video by him, and it shows Spider-Man ordering the death of Mysterio by Edith. And Peter obviously knows that's not to be true, but the video is played by J. Jonah Jameson, who again is played by the always amazing J.K. Simmons, who's putting on his best Alex Jones impersonation of Jameson, much like how we see him or hear him in the recent Spider-Man game and how he's been in the comics recently, which is utterly fantastic. It's perfect for the character, and I can't wait to see him come back in sequels. Spider-Man Far From Home was a really awesome, funny, and action-packed post-Endgame Marvel movie that utilizes the plot points left over for our characters from Homecoming or Endgame, and John Watts has proven he understands these characters really well and actually cares for them, and cares about putting them on the big screen in the best way possible. The movie delivers some really awesome visuals as well as some really touching moments from Peter, who Tom Holland plays an amazingly broken Peter Parker in this film, who kind of regains his confidence. It's a great way to end phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and end the Infinity Saga, but also puts forth some really awesome plot points going into phase 4 and for future Spider-Man films. I'm going to give Spider-Man Far From Home a 9 out of 10. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my newest video. If you enjoyed it, you might also like to check out my other reviews here on my channel. You can also follow me on various social media platforms like Twitter by searching Matt_FOS, or even join the Comic Multiverse Discord server and chat with other comic book fans, including myself and Joel from Cape Joel. Want cheap comics and trades? Head over to the book depository with the link in the description to get the cheapest trades and comics around, along with free shipping anywhere in the world. Until next time, this has been Matt of the Fortress of Solitude. Thank you so much for watching.